Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our workshop today on social media fundamentals. This workshop is part of the digital marketing education program that's being brought to all of you by Martin County Tourism. We're running this program to help our community businesses really maximize their digital exposure, as well as provide some critical COVID-19 response information with visitors and your local market alike. I'm Kim Palmer. I am the program director here at Miles Partnership, and we are working with the team at Martin County Tourism to develop the content for these workshops, and we are here to help you. In the chat box, you will find a link to book some office hours time with our team here at Miles. We are available to help you claim your listings on Google My Business, Yelp, or TripAdvisor, and to answer any questions you may have about the topics we've been covering here. So far, we have had sessions on maximizing your exposure with your online listings, as well as customer relationship management. Today, we are going to talk about some fundamentals behind planning your social media presence and outreach. And I'm joined by Narissa from Martin County Tourism, and we're just about ready to get started here today. I'm actually going to turn off my video because it's a little bit easier on focus and bandwidth there. And please be sure to ask us any questions as we go. So today we're going to talk about the 5 keys to social media marketing. And we're looking at this in terms of really just getting started with your social media presence. And those keys are first and foremost to shift your focus, choose your channels, create a plan, find your voice, and respond and refine. So we want to start really here at the beginning. Because you may have heard that social media has huge potential for your business because it is a high volume platform. It has billions and millions of users worldwide. That's a great opportunity for you to push your marketing messages out on those platforms. That's really not the way that we should think about social media when we're planning to engage with it for our businesses. Instead, we need to shift our focus. We need to shift that focus to our customers. Why do we get involved with social media? Well, it really isn't to blast your marketing message out to a large audience. The purpose behind social media is to really deepen your relationships with your customers, supporting your customers and meeting their needs, making new connections within your community and within visitors to your market, joining conversations that are relevant to your business and the priorities of your organization. And at the end of the day, when we're deepening and building relationships with our customers, we're ultimately earning their trust. And trust is the key to customer loyalty. So on a long-term basis, participation in social media is really about that customer relationship and that long-term trust and loyalty with our customer base. So if it's not all about you, who it is about? It's about your audience. So our first step in understanding our social media strategy is to really think about our audience. Who are they? We can start, of course, with demographics. Where do they live? What is their household income? What level of education, age, gender, race, etc. All make up the profile of our customers. In particular, it's important to understand the geography of those customers, especially if you're a tourism business. You may have a mix of patrons who are locals to your market, but you may have a broader mix of folks that are from out of town who are visitors. And we may have seen that mix change recently. You may be seeing more road trippers, more extended local area visitors versus out-of-state visitors. We're certainly not seeing the level of international visitors we've seen previously. So understanding the geographic source of those demographics is important as well. But who your audience is really expands beyond demographics. We look at things like their purchase behavior. What are their interests? What are their motivators? In addition to being a customer of your business, what are the things that they are doing outside of their homes? What are they motivated by? Are they interested in culture? Are they sports focused? Are they environmentally motivated? Also, what are the pain points and concerns for your customers? A lot of times our businesses are solving a problem, providing a solution to our customers. What are those problems that our organization solves for those folks? What are the concerns that we hear from our customers on a regular basis? At the end of the day, who is your audience? Well, in the advertising agency world, there's something called creating a persona. And this is something that really helps us narrow down who our audience is by sort of creating some fictitious profiles around what our typical customer looks like. So think about 3 to 5 of your typical customers and try to define who they were. If you could roll them all into a representative person, what would they look like? What would their interests be? What would they do? Doing an exercise like this really helps us to create focus and helps us to structure our content development based on who our audience really is. So what does that look like in practice? So for example, let's say we run a museum. Who are the visitors to our museum? Well, a good percentage of our patrons may be local retirees who are interested in keeping active. They may be heavily community involved. They may be the source of some of the patronage for our organization. Outside, they are highly interested in things like dining and golf. Another main piece of our audience may be vacationing families. These are often led by the female head of household who is interested in enrichment for her family, keeping those kids busy. Motivators may be around value and safety for their family. Depending on the topic of our museum, we may be a source for academics, folks who are interested in our subject matter expertise or some specific collections that we may have. They are going to be motivated by the availability of resources in our organization or the release of new research findings or new exhibits in our museum. Now, in the agency space, we take this pretty far. We'll go into things like what brands do these folks buy? What magazines do they read? What television shows and movies are they interested in? But you really don't have to go into a deep dive of really creating a detailed persona for all these folks. If you're able to at least create 3 to 5 of those core buckets of what your typical customer looks like, it makes it a whole lot easier to think about in more personal detail what kind of conversations you want to have with these folks. So once we understand our audience, we're going to move into choosing our channels. Now, the truth is, in social media, you don't need to be everywhere. One of the falsehoods about social media marketing is that there half a dozen or more different social media channels, and you need to be out there and communicating and having a presence on every single one. Well, that really isn't true. What you need to do is actually be where your customers are and where they want to interact with you. Chances are you have limited resources, and that means you need to focus on the best networks for your business and invest in a smart mix of channels rather than trying to be everywhere for everyone. So let's talk a little bit about those channels. The elephant in the room, of course, is Facebook. Facebook is the largest social media network in the world with over 2.5 billion worldwide monthly users. So a tremendous audience exists on Facebook, as well as a really extensive variety of ways to communicate different kinds of content. Uploading photos and videos, posting updates, checking into locations, sharing stories, sharing other people's content are all part of participating in the Facebook platform. For example, here Discover Martin County has shared an article which features your market, is using hashtags to tie that to the broader Florida tourism marketing program, as well as tagging specific locations in the market that are a part of that article. Facebook is also a great place to create and promote events. In fact, you can go live with live video through your Facebook page and actually bring folks directly into that event through the Facebook platform. Overall, Facebook is an older audience, but that's a little bit more of an urban legend than is true. While it is not super popular in the 13 to 17-year-old sector, really across the board, there is very broad use of the Facebook platform. Facebook also offers some very advanced advertising targeting based on who your audience is. But there are some things to consider if Facebook is really right for you. The Facebook arena is incredibly crowded, and what has happened over the course of the last several years is that organic posts have really limited visibility. So things that you post without boosting them financially often are only limited to a percentage of your followers and a much smaller audience. I also just wanted to note that unlike the other platforms, you should always keep your business page on Facebook current, as we discussed in our listing session, the first session of this course. Responding to reviews and keeping that information current, no matter whether you're going to expand into Facebook as a social media strategy, is important. Because you do find that customers are looking for core business information in your business profile. Now, Instagram is actually part of the Facebook product family, but it is really narrowed in on photo and video sharing. Rather than updates and articles and check-ins and things like that, really reserved for Facebook. Instagram is very much focused on the visual aspect. Instagram has a highly engaged audience who are on the platform frequently, are really digging into the content that is there. While they stole it from Snapchat, stories on Instagram, but actually on Facebook as well, are one of the more recent features that have a lot of use. In particular on Instagram, folks tend to be looking at the stories that are posted by brands and by individuals before they start scrolling down to individual images. A story is a quick, visually rich narrative that can provide inspiration. It can also give folks an inside perspective of what's happening at your business. A story is essentially a collection of photos and or video clips in a series Often they're enhanced by copy put on top of the image, hashtags, etc. Much like Facebook, Instagram also has a go live with customers. And that is a great opportunity to talk back and forth directly with customers. The advertising types on Instagram now include shopping ads. So you can sell your product directly on Instagram. More than any other platform, hashtags are used to build visibility for your posts. You'll often find posts that have a dozen or more hashtags on them. So a hashtag is when you're using the pound symbol and a word or phrase, and folks can search by hashtags. So if I'm interested in travel and I search for the hashtag travel, I'm going to see all of the posts that have been marked with that hashtag. So the more high visibility hashtags you use in your post, the more likely it is to be viewed by other folks on Instagram. Instagram is also probably the top performing platform for influencers and really requires a healthy balance of both quantity and quality of content. Now, some things to consider related to Instagram is if building website traffic is a priority for your business, Instagram is probably not the platform for you. There's a very limited ability to create click-throughs directly to websites outside of shopping ads. And it also really requires a commitment to ongoing quality imagery. Looking a little bit at the demographics for Facebook and for Instagram, you can see how broad the reach is of Facebook, with 75% of women and 63% of men across the United States engaged in the Facebook platform. And while those numbers are certainly somewhat lower for Instagram, you can also see that demographic skew towards older folks. Facebook, when we get into the 50 plus range, we still have a pretty high percentage of adoption among American families, where you can see 65 plus is just not using Instagram there. So moving on to Twitter. Twitter is a continuous real-time updates and commentary about the world. Twitter is really our best resource for connecting one-on-one with our customers. And that's why one of its best applications is to provide real-time customer service. It's really the ability to have an almost one-on-one dialogue with our customers. It's also a useful tool for customer and competitor listening because the dialogue is so frequently updated and ongoing. It's a great place to get the pulse of what's going on surrounding a particular community or topic. Across the board, when we're posting on Twitter, we want to sparingly but strategically use both photos and video because they improve the visibility of our posts. More so than other platforms, using hashtags and mentions are done much more sparingly on Twitter than in somewhere like Instagram. Some things to consider when looking at Twitter as a platform is the frequency of posting and engagement that's really required to have visibility, because it is sort of an online, ongoing stream of consciousness almost of information. It does require a high level of engagement. It's also known for having a higher level of sort of trolling and spam. It currently tends to be very political and can certainly result in some conversations that you may not necessarily want to engage with as your brand. One great example in your market of the use of Twitter was the Stewart Air Show. While the show was going on, they were using Twitter throughout the event to share information about when different aspects of the show were actually happening. Now, YouTube is the second largest search engine on Earth, owned by Google and focused entirely on video content. People who are successful using the YouTube platform are ultimately the ones who are able to grow a subscriber base with consistent and engaging content. On the plus side, YouTube has a much longer time spent than other platforms. Folks tend to watch entire videos, move on to other related videos that are suggested to them. And if they're anything like my kids, just spend entirely too long getting immersed in the content that exists on that platform. YouTube also has the opportunity to create some more substantive SEO value than other platforms. Videos and channels can be optimized, much like your web pages, for search engine optimization by using title tags and descriptions. YouTube is also a top channel for brands to partner with influencers who have a really strong following in a particular subject matter area. But the things to consider with YouTube primarily are the time and resources that you have available for video production. There are advertising options within YouTube, but they tend to be rather disruptive. I'm sure you've seen the pre-roll videos and advertising that's available there. If you're anything like me, you skip them pretty darn quickly. YouTube is also a platform with a fairly high level of trolling and sort of nonsense back and forth in the comments section, etc. We did find, looking in your market in YouTube, fishing is a very popular YouTube topic in the Martin County area. There were quite a few fishing series taking place in the area. There's folks here who reportedly caught Snookosaurus off the coast there. Demographically speaking, you've got about a quarter of the population on the Twitter platform, whereas YouTube is 70 to 75% plus. But you can see that the folks on Twitter are highly college educated and more of a higher income level than, whereas it's a really even spread across the board in YouTube. So talk a little bit about Pinterest. So Pinterest is a virtual scrapbook of sorts that has really turned into a shopping mall as of recently. It's really where we're sharing ideas and images. A lot of aspirational travel planning takes place on Pinterest, and there's the ability to direct link those images in your pin directly to products and pages and content on your website. Your business may actually already be featured in pins that exist on Pinterest. There's quite a few Stuart, Florida area pins out there around beaches, restaurants, etc. Great thing about Pinterest is your content tends to be evergreen and have a lot of long-term reach. I, for example, have a couple pins of some medal holders for my half marathon medals that have been shared literally hundreds of times in other pins, and it's something I posted probably 5 years ago. So content that you pin on Pinterest can definitely continue to have legs in the long term. Also, more so than any other platform, Pinterest skews very highly towards women. Considerations in using Pinterest are that you need to have both quality images and corresponding content online on your website, such as product availability or content. And Pinterest is really just not aligned with some business categories. It is very popular in travel, sharing recipes, sharing fashion, home and decor ideas, but other business categories don't align as well with Pinterest. LinkedIn is the network for business professionals to connect and find jobs and share updates. Unlike other platforms, the organic reach for your posts in LinkedIn is still relatively high, and it's ideal for business announcements, recruiting, and overall brand credibility. If you do advertising on the LinkedIn network, you can target it down to job title, seniority, and professional attributes for your market. And while some of the things to consider is these ads are actually higher priced than on other platforms, but they're also much more narrowly targeted. And this is really the audience for professionals and for B2B businesses. So if you're thinking about recruiting or growing your business, this may be an important place for you to start. Demographically, also just want to point out again, you can see the skew to female in Pinterest compared to LinkedIn. You can also see that LinkedIn trends very high in upper income and college educated audiences. So moving into a couple of the younger, hipper social media platforms, everyone has heard of Snapchat. Snapchat is a messaging app that was really designed around sharing text and images and video that disappear really quickly after their delivery. No content on Snapchat lasts very long, but there are 3.5 billion of these snaps sent on a daily basis. So there's a tremendous amount of volume of content. And all of that content is really in the moment. While there are some advertising options for brands, they are things like interstitial ads or claiming a filter. Snapchat is known for their augmented reality filters that can make you look really beautiful or make you look really silly. Brands have taken advantage of this so that I can look like the Cheeto guy as some, branding for snack food. At the end of the day, for businesses, there really is no customer service application in Snapchat. Just all the in the moment sort of content doesn't really play well for ongoing conversations and dialogues. It has fairly limited reach among older adults. However, if you're the type of brand or service that is really targeting a younger demographic, you may want to take a look at some of the options that are available in participating in Snapchat. Again, this is around a quarter of the US population, but you can again see the very heavy skew towards the 13 to 29-year-old age range in there. Last but not least, the golden social network of 2020 has been TikTok. It was created sort of in response to a platform called Vine that used to exist several years ago, where folks could share really short video clips. The whole purpose of TikTok is to create and share short videos and slideshows. There's templates where you can use music, voice effects, other features. There's a lot of challenges around using either the same effect or the same song in different scenarios. It's a lot of fun, and it has been the fastest growing social platform of 2020. All of its content delivery is artificial intelligence based on the things you have engaged with, liked, followed, etc. That continues to feed you content based on those preferences. Now, we may not think of it as a marketing platform for travel. However, the travel hashtag on TikTok is at 27.1 billion views. So there definitely is some content sharing around travel experiences and travel planning and daydreaming. It's very popular among the youngest of our demographics. Right now, there are very limited advertising options within the TikTok platform. It certainly is not the place to reach the middle-aged crowd, so to speak. So choosing your channels, I really encourage you to listen and learn and think through which channels are going to align with those audiences that you've defined. Some ways you can do this are to really audit yourself. Search for your business on Google, search for it in the social networks and see what you find. Are you finding a lot of check-ins to your location or at mentions of your business? In some cases, we'll even find phony or fan accounts for our businesses that have been set up, or old accounts that may have been established years ago and were abandoned. I also recommend you take a look at your competitors' profiles to see what they've been up to. What have they been posting? What kind of response have they been getting from their customers? Follow some hashtags that are specific to your geographic location or your industry. You can also set alerts in Google so that you'll be notified when there's a mention of your business. And finally, there are a number of listening and management tools out there in the market, things like Hootsuite, Sprout Social, Buffer, Sendable, etc., that do some of the work for you, consolidating that information into one place. Really, I also believe at the end of the day, because we are talking about one-on-one relationships with our customers, is that you can really start by asking your customers. Ask the folks that come into your business today, what social media platforms are they using? And where would they be looking for you? Where would they choose to interact with you on social media? So now that we know our audience and we've chosen our channels, it's time to create a plan. As with any good plan, we start by setting goals. Now, your social media goals are not that unique. They really are going to align with your overall business goals. Whenever we talk about goals, we like to talk about SMART goals. These are some ways to think about your goals to make sure that they're really attainable. What SMART stands for, if you haven't seen this before, is first to be specific. Be very specific about what exactly you are trying to achieve. Not something like make my customers happier, but maybe it is grow my number of followers by 20% in the next 3 months. Is it measurable? You really need to define up front how you're going to gauge your success. What metrics are you going to look at to decide whether or not your effort has been successful? Is it obtainable? Wouldn't set a goal for yourself to have 1 million views on YouTube in the first 6 months. We need to create goals that we have a good chance of actually hitting. Are they relevant to your business? And very importantly, are they time bound? A lot of times when we don't give ourselves structure and deadlines, things tend to sort of fall by the wayside. When we're thinking about goals, we also need to come back to thinking about our customers. What are their pain points? And how can you create content that is going to help solve their problems? Now, I recommend that you try to start by writing some of this down, creating a format where you are identifying your business objectives, the corresponding social media goal, and what metric you're going to use to define them. Now, the examples here are pretty broad, things like growing your brand, turning customers into advocates through engagement, improving customer retention, or flat out driving leads or sales measured by conversions such as website clicks or email signups. I would argue that there are other less broad objectives for you to consider as a small business. Things simply around communicating COVID safety practices, providing better customer service. At the end of the day, our objectives are going to be tied to a combination of both direct sales and assisted sales, probably more so on the assisted side, where your interactions with posts and social media may not generate a tangible quantity of purchases, but are going to influence your customers on a long-term basis. Again, really tying our thinking, and just want to reiterate that the reason we're on social media is to deepen our relationships, make connections, and join conversations in an attempt to ultimately earn trust. So always keep that in the back of your head as you're defining these goals, and then ultimately looking at what tactics we're going to use to achieve these goals. Are we going to create and post events? Are we going to post updates? Paid promotion, photo, videos, content curation, community involvement, contests, polls, influencer outreach. All of these are tactics that we can use in the social media space to obtain our goals. But let's talk honestly about budget, because social media does require a budget. And it's something we should think about and plan for in advance. As I mentioned in the overview, most of our major platforms at this point have very limited organic visibility to your posts. And in many cases, you're going to need to allocate funds for ads or promoted posts. It's actually not a whole lot of money. You can put fairly small dollar amounts behind promoting posts within a targeted geographic area and see some great visibility. The other consideration you may need to make is whether you need to budget for things like graphics or production. If your strategy requires a lot of video content, or if you know you want to have icons for certain things that you're going to feature on a regular basis, you may need to engage creative type to help you with those. Speaking of budget, we're asked pretty frequently about influencers. About 63% of customers trust influencers over the claims that brands are making directly. So what is an influencer? An influencer is someone who has a broad following on a social media platform, engages with their following on a regular basis, and is well known in a particular community. These folks are often great to align with in order to spread the word about your business or brand. The way that happens with influencers are several different ways. Some just flat out charge for a sponsored post with your organization. Some will want free products for them to review and comment on if you're the type of business that provides products. Some will want free services, free meals, free trips, etc. In order to either broadcast from your location or to provide a review. Another approach with influencers is to create a co-branded product. Say that you have a brand of beer or a clothing or jewelry line. You can co-brand a specific product with that influencer, and they can promote it to their network. The other important thing to keep in mind related to influencers when we talk about them today, most folks feel like that's pretty much out of reach for them because we can't afford to hire Michael Jordan to tweet or share about our brand. But in today's era, 20,000 is the new 2 million. There are dozens of influencers out there who have much smaller followings, maybe even 5 to 15,000 followers. But if they are in a niche that is particularly relevant to your audience, if your audience really is part of a particular interest category that this person is well known in, engaging a much lesser known influencer can sometimes still create some great traction with new and future customers. Now, there's a human element to budgeting for social media as well. The kiss of death in a social media program is to assume that it's going to be done for free and that you are going to do this in your spare time. The reality is that really just never works. Social media is always on, even when you're not. And that's really why we're choosing the channels where we're going to have the biggest impact. Even if you're only utilizing yours and your employees' time, your time isn't free. Any time you're spending on social media is time that you're not spending in other areas of your business, and that needs to be taken into consideration. Social media is always on, so we need to be prepared to respond in near real time to comments and feedback coming in from social media. So this is where businesses often need to ask themselves whether they need to get involved with a professional. So who is going to own your social media? Well, if it was 2009, I would say it was typically these guys. Bonus points for anybody who remembers this movie. But originally it was, okay, who knows a college kid who can run my social media for me? Now, that's not entirely untrue still, even today. And you should start by doing a survey of your team. You may not realize that you have some folks with some untapped interests and talents around things like photography or video. You know, who on your team is really known for being creative or a great conversationalist? They may be the folks that you really want to engage front and center in your social media approach. You may also want to look for a small agency or a freelancer. The really important thing there is that you're talking about someone who understands your company culture and is able to speak in your voice. In our best case scenario, some organizations can actually afford to have a dedicated community manager. And that's a person who is really a combination of product expert with sales ability, as well as someone who has creativity and also a great personality. So talking about content, storytelling is really the key to great content on social media. You know, when we're using social media, we are there to tell a story. Some tips related to telling your story. Write like you talk. You want to make sure that we're being authentic on these platforms. We want to curate and share real experiences of real people. Definitely try to keep in mind including a call to action as a part of your story. And be consistent, but not repetitive across channels. One thing we find that folks will do frequently is just blast out the same post across 4, 5, or 6 different social media channels, which doesn't really take into consideration the unique audiences and peculiarities of those platforms. Make sure that you've researched and are using the right hashtags for your posts, and that you're thinking through utilizing a mix of different content types. To kind of wrap your head around this initial planning, there's kind of 2 different approaches. One is an 80-20 rule, where about 80% of your content should inform, educate, or entertain your audience, and about 20% of that content should be surrounding promoting your business. Another way to look at this is via a rule of thirds, where we are spending about 1/3 of our time telling our own personal stories, about 1/3 of our time sharing ideas and stories from others, and about 1/3 of our time promoting your business. This approach really takes into account that part of what we can do on social media is curate content that is of interest to our audience. We can discover posts and provide our own context for things that others have posted. So I want to give you a little example here where I live on the West Coast. The Mote Marine Laboratory and Aquarium, I think, is a stellar example of some of these strategies put into action. I follow them on social media, and they have a really great balance of these different approaches. So for example, here, there's a combination of both Cecil, who is their little turtle. He appears in a lot of their posts. You can see him here in his little Halloween costume. He went through a series of Halloween costumes this year, which was really a fun and funny approach to reaching their audience. They're also sharing business updates. They're in the process of building a new location. So there have been updates around groundbreaking and fundraising related to the new location. Of course, they do still sell on the social media platform. Periodically, there will be discounts, ticket offers, or this example here is the ability to adopt a manatee for Christmas. So some things that they were actually selling on these channels. And they're also a rescue and environmental advocacy organization. So some of their time on social media is spent sharing information about current rescues and research that are happening at the lab. They're also sharing content. In the process of sharing content, they're choosing certain areas that are important to them as an organization and finding content that aligns with that to share on their channels. For example, STEM, National STEM Day was something they acknowledged by sharing an upcoming talk that was happening on a science channel from one of their employees. They've also shared things like the local theater, which offers children's programs. Absolutely nothing to do with marine science at all, more in supporting the culture and enrichment of children in our community. They've also shared articles from various magazines tied to diversity in science, in addition to things like STEM. Lastly, they're also looking at a variety of content types. So for example, they had a big announcement around some reef spawning that was happening in the area, which has not happened and is a really great environmental signal. That was shared on Twitter as a news piece. In the center here, you're looking at a live video feed. This was a lot of fun. They were actually carving pumpkins in the shark tank and did a live video feed of that event. And they also have events that they create on Facebook and share with the community on those platforms. So these are some examples of utilizing a variety of content. So get out your pens and papers or your computer or your tablet and take the time to actually create a content plan for your social media. Having a written out content plan is going to help you keep goals focused and keep yourself organized. It's also really essential if you're going to collaborate with others in your organization or with an outside agency on your social media planning and distribution. It also makes it easier for us to make real-time adjustments in context of the big picture because things do change frequently and sometimes we have to pivot and adapt. It doesn't have to be complicated. You can do something as simple as a shared Google Sheet to create your content plan. And in fact, if you search, there's at least a dozen social media content plan templates available online that you can utilize. Or there's a number of social media planning platforms that offer this service as well. Within your content plan, consider having either a calendar format or including your date and time, what channel the content's going on, what type of content it will be, what assets you might need for that post, deadlines, what your measurement metric is. You can even use the plan to help draft your copy and identify links, hashtags, or mentions that you're going to use in the post. Also a good place to keep track of budget if you do plan to boost the post. Now, shared content often happens organically and is not necessarily going to be something you can put into a content plan, but go ahead and define for yourself 3 to 5 categories of topics that you will keep an eye out for and consistently address, whether if it is related to your business type, your community, if you are environmentally focused or sports focused. Those are the things you're going to keep a pulse on to look for things that are a good alignment for you to share. But those don't usually make it onto the content calendar because you're sort of at the mercy of what else is posted out there. So moving on to talking about finding your voice. Your company has a character, and social media challenges brands and businesses to speak in a genuine human voice. And so I encourage you to really think about what the human voice of your business really is. Brands have personality, just like the people we meet. We know that Tiffany and Apple are associated with sophistication, that Intel is aligned with competence, that excitement and Nike go hand in hand. But have you ever done this kind of thinking around your own business? This is a gauge that I like to use, and you'll have a copy of this presentation deck. I encourage you to come back and maybe even print out this slide and fill in the dots where they make the most sense for your organization. It's really a scale of 1 to 3, with 0 being neutral. Thinking about some of these characteristics, be it simple to complex, classic to contemporary, unconventional to mainstream, casual to elegant. Where does your brand and your business fall on these scales? Go ahead and fill in those dots, and that's going to help really define for you some of your brand characteristics. Here's another fun way to do this. Take a look at this list of adjectives. Find 8 to 10 of them that align with your business and your brand. Now, take that short list and narrow that down to 3 or 4. And those adjectives can really be used to describe the voice of your business. Make sure you've created and shared this persona. What are your business's defining traits? What are your core values? Do you have a mission statement? All of these things come together to really create the voice of your organization. And this is the voice that you're going to want to use across social media platforms. I also highly recommend that you create a social media policy. And this would be a code of conduct for anyone who is going to be speaking on behalf of your organization via your social media. It really serves 2 purposes. First, you want your voice of your business to be consistent, whether it's you or Mary or Joe who are speaking on your social media behalf. There's transparency and responsibility involved in being on the front line of communicating directly with your customers. And the folks involved need to understand what is the acceptable tone, voice, and language for your organization. You can even go so far as to define specific keywords, phrases, or emojis that you want to be consistent in the use of your posts. It's also helpful to define what not to say. Maybe we don't ever call our location a bar. We only ever call it a pub because that is who we are as a brand and an organization. It's also important to note how you're going to respond to a crisis. Are you going to pause your messaging or adapt it in a crisis situation? Other things to avoid when you're speaking on social media, the use of jargon. Please don't talk about your synergy with anything. Anything that could be construed as clickbait speech. We've all seen clickbait. It's the biggest, the largest, the most amazing. You're going to be shocked when you see it. Kind of language really isn't how we have an authentic conversation with our customers, because they're often disappointed once they click through and find out that it really wasn't all that. Don't make attempts to be hip that are not in line with your true brand voice. If you would not say that something is lit in real life, do not use it in your posts. The one that drives me particularly crazy is the posts that start with, I can't even this mimosa. I can't even this burger. If you don't actually talk like that, don't make the attempt to be hip with the language. And finally, you want to avoid hard sell. Remember, we're talking about conversations here. And if you were introduced to someone for the first time and we're striking up a conversation with them, you wouldn't lead with a heavy sales pitch. Finally, responding and refining. Now, I encourage you all to go back and review our customer relationship management workshop, where we talked about responding to both positive and negative feedback from our customers. This is going to happen all the time on social media because it is a two-way conversation with your audience. It's really important to acknowledge all comments that folks take the time to make on your social media. And if you're ever mentioned in someone else's post, taking that time to acknowledge and respond. Along the way, we're going to review and adapt. All of these platforms have native analytics tools, as well as the social media management tools that you may use to pull the data together in one place. At the end of the day, likes don't equal success. You need to keep your eye on the original goals that you set for your organization and not swap them out. If you're not getting links through to your website and that was your goal, but you got a bunch of likes, don't just assume that you've done okay when you hit one metric but not the other. Make sure you keep to your timeline. This posting with frequency is difficult to do and easy to put off until later. But consistency and frequency is really critical on social media channels. So try to hold to your timeline. If you're going to be doing any comparisons, make sure you have the before for any before and afters. And across the board, just review as you go and adapt if necessary. If you're finding that the post you made of the old photo of Main Street from Throwback Thursday had a really tremendous response, you may want to go through the archives on a regular basis and continue to post some of those quirky old photos if there's something that's responding, that's performing real well. That may not have been in your original content plan. That's an example of where we may adapt based on what works well for us. Finally, I just want to say, stick with it. Social media is a marathon and not a sprint. Much like our real world relationships, it takes time and persistence to grow your network with your community. Make sure that you stay integrated with your messaging and your voice, not just on social media, but on the other channels that you have, whether it's your website, your email program, even the posters or the messaging within your location. Across the board, we want to make sure that we continue to tell a consistent and authentic story to our customers across all touch points. So I appreciate all of you joining us today to talk about the keys to social media marketing, shifting our focus to our customers, choosing our channels based on where our customers are at, creating a plan, finding our authentic voice, and responding and refining in real time as we go. I hope all of you will join us next Tuesday for our final workshop in the session, which is paid advertising for businesses on Google and Facebook. That will be next Tuesday, the 15th at 10 a.m. Again, I encourage you to sign up for office hours with our team to help you along and answer your questions. For those of you in the tourism space who are participating in the broader program, we will be following up with you on the other aspects of the program that need to be completed in the next week or two here. Beyond that, I know we're right at the top of the hour. We got started a little bit late, but we'll try to quickly look at a couple of questions we have here. We also have you in here by name, so we'll respond to those questions directly as well. Just a couple of questions here. Jen calls out with Instagram eliminating the recent hashtags with election and COVID issues. How can we use hashtags to help get to the top of the local hashtag in a community? Well, there isn't really a way around the kind of lockdown that Instagram is doing right now on recent hashtags, but I do encourage you to continue to use the ones that are most relevant to your community. They will come up ultimately in search. I'm really hoping that this hashtag lockdown thing is going to be temporary, but there's not really a workaround for it per se. One of the things you might consider doing is looking at locations in the community that can be mentioned in your post. If you are at a particular beach or I know you guys have a great Main Street Association. As I understand it, I don't think those are as locked down right now as what's going on with hashtags. Question here about recommending auto posting from Instagram to Facebook and or Twitter. Auto posting I would use sparingly. I think each of our social media platforms has a unique audience and style and voice to them. And even if you're making minor adaptations to the same post to account for that, you're going to ultimately see better performance than making the same post on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at the same time. It's a very common practice, and for sake of efficiency is sometimes just flat out necessary for us. But do try to create a balance where not everything you post is the same across every platform. You actually create the ability to tire your audience a bit, because once they see you on Instagram, they know if they see you on Facebook, it's going to be the same thing. So definitely consider mixing it up across your platforms there. Lastly, a question about events, whether we recommend a certain type of event to schedule, recurring events such as trivia or discount hours, or Facebook events should be used for more of one-of-a-kind events. Again, there's a little concern with audience fatigue if you are going to create weekly events around things like trivia and senior discounts. I've seen a lot of local businesses who do that because they do occur on a weekly basis. Sometimes it's better to remind folks via a post of those sorts of things, rather than to fill up your calendar with the same events week after week. Again, you tend to get folks who sort of expect to see it and may miss a really unique event that you have out there. So I would lean more towards using Facebook events for your sort of one-of-a-kind events, your unique holiday offerings, things like that. And, you know, try to create a schedule of sending out reminders about things like trivia and discounts more in posts. Lastly, and then I'm going to let everybody go here because I know we're a little bit over time. Advertising related, using boosting or ads, which is better, really depends on what your post is. Boosting a post is usually a little more cost effective than flat out buying an ad. There's different rules and regulations around ads versus posts. I would look at the ads more in if this is something that you would build a campaign around, say you have an upcoming event that you want to grow attendance for, and you're also promoting it in, say, a local magazine or the newspaper's website, then you might think about that effort more as a campaign that you would buy actual advertising for. Boosted posts can be a little bit more in the moment, where there's something, say a special offer that you're just putting out for this Saturday night that you want to get in front of more people than you would organically, is more of a scenario for boosting a post. I do not have a favorite content plan calendar, but I do recommend that you jump into the blog of Hootsuite. They do a really good job of simplifying social media strategies, and they actually do have some templates available for social media audits, content plans, strategies, etc. They'll probably give you a sales call for reaching out for it. But there are also some free Google Sheets. If you just search for content plan in Google Sheets. I personally, a lot of people like them in calendar format. I like them more in a spreadsheet format. It doesn't matter to me that it actually looks like a calendar, but that's really a personal preference sort of thing there. I think that was all the questions we had in the questions box. I appreciate all of you hanging in with us a little bit longer than planned today. And looking forward to next week's session on online advertising. Again, please feel free to set up some office hours time with our team here at Miles to answer any of your individual questions. So with that, I am going to wrap us up. Have a great rest of your day.